Thank you everyone for being here. I just want to quickly introduce Elise and Allison to everyone. I've actually known Elise for about 11 years.
Sounds about right.
Like that. We were club teammates at FAST for a little bit, and then Elise actually trained with us for about a year during the pandemic.
Oh man.
Here's a video of Elise crushing her rotational scoop toss. It's actually on this wall right here.
That's correct.
So yeah, she was with us for about a year, and then she got her bachelor's degree in sociology and social welfare from Cal Berkeley, and then she got her master's degree in marriage and family therapy from USC. As an athlete, Elise swam for 4 years at Cal Berkeley. She was an NC2A champion there. You can see her NC2A championship plaque right there. And she was also the captain of her team. And then she swam for 1 year with USC while she was completing her master's degree. And she also competed at the 2016 and 2021 Olympic trials. So obviously Elise is a very qualified and elite athlete, and she understands what it takes to compete at a very high level, but she also understands how to tackle the mental side of things from a clinical perspective. So super excited to have someone so qualified present to us today. A little bit about Allison. Allison got her bachelor's degree from Santa Clara University in psychology, and she has her teaching credential and master's degree from Mount St. Mary's University, and she also has a master's degree in marital family therapy from Alliant International University. And both of them are also a associate in marriage and family therapy. So super excited. Thank you guys for being here. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Elise and
Sean, thank you for that very kind intro. Thank you all for coming out today. This is really exciting. It's really awesome to be on the other side of sport and now finish up my master's, being able to practice this work that I'm so passionate about. And so let's get started. So building a champion's mindset. I think first let's break this down. So what is a champion? What comes to mind when you hear a champion? If anyone wants to shout anything out, go for it. If not, that's okay too. Go for it. The top. Yes. Yes. So very skillful. Maybe they are seen as like having raw talent. They are kind of make it look effortless, and maybe people believe that they shouldn't make mistakes or have any sort of faults. And I would say that although that talent is really important, you'll get to a point where that'll only take you so far. And so that's kind of where the mindset piece is something that you all can start working on now, long before, you know, those accolades, hitting those goal times, making those cuts. This is something that you can start today. So that's why Allison and I are here with you all this morning. And now, before we get into those components of champion's mindset, I think it's important to talk about what is mental health. I think in the world we live in today, we hear this buzzword, mental health matters, and kind of that is just kind of tossed around. So I want to break it down a little bit more. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act, and helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And for your sake as athletes, I want you to think of mental health as mental fitness. Mental health doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. You all know what it means to be physically in shape, and so now it's kind of thinking of being mentally fit, mentally in shape. Another big piece of this is because we cannot separate our mind and our body. So if, let's say, we're really nervous about something and our body responds in a way that's like, oh, my stomach, I have like butterflies. And that's like that mind-body connection that athletes know very well, and which really serves you to compete at the highest level. And there's sometimes that can be difficult to manage from time to time. I experienced that a lot, and kind of working on that piece is, I think, what took me to that next level in my sport.
Today you're going to hear Elise talk about some champions, some Olympic athletes, and recently they've come out and talked about how they've had challenges with their mental health. And so today we kind of wanted to break that stigma of mental health being that there's something wrong with us, and as athletes approach it in a way where we're working towards our mental fitness, because we all know that's part of our game, right? How we think about ourselves and about the game or our performance beforehand, during, and after, right? And so we need to build that fitness around how we respond to our thoughts, our emotions, and those sensations that happen throughout the moments where we're in, we're performing.
Alrighty, so let's hear from some of the greats and what they have to say about mental health, because I think these are people that we see as champions, but there's another side of them that I think is really important. So Michael Phelps, he said this at a talk that he did on mental health, and he said, I would urge every one of you to do those two things. Pay attention to your mental and physical health. If we're not giving ourselves the best chance. And I actually had the opportunity to go see Missy Franklin speak at an event a few weeks ago in Berkeley, and I was able to ask her a question in light of this conversation that I'm having today. And her response about mental health was, you can be in the absolute best shape in your life, but if you get up on the block and mentally you're not in the right place, none of the other stuff matters. And I think that's something that I think gets overlooked a lot of the time in our sports. So I'm going to be referencing athletes throughout this conversation, and my goal here today is just to remind you guys that this champion mindset starts now. You can start this process right now, and there's things you can take away going into, I know you guys have sectionals coming up, or junior nationals, and then eventually your CIF meets, and these are things that you can begin working on. And I want to say that it takes practice, just like all the other stuff that you're doing in the pool, in the weight room. You're not going to go to the gym once and be strong. Like, you have to put the work in, put the reps in, and the same thing goes for this mental side of things.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of talk about when we work with our clients, is that it's always about practice, consistency, trial and error, right? We have to put in the time, we have to train, and we have to train our minds to manage our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our sensations, things that come up, how we cope with them, how we respond. And so that sort of mental training is the same way as athletes we would physically train, right? You have to put that time in, you have to practice, and there's that consistency, because we know if we just do it one time, it might not land, right? But that's part of the discipline and the performance piece of being an athlete, is how can we also train our mind to be mentally fit?
All right. So we're going to get into the core components, and I want to say, if anyone wants to take notes, like on their phone, or if they have a piece of paper, go for it. Because again, takes time and practice, so just this one conversation may not be enough, but this is hopefully a starting point for you all. This is like a framework that I would say helps athletes, leaders, high achievers kind of perform at their best and overcome adversity and maintain focus throughout this process. So the components, we're going to get into them more individually, but first we have mental resilience, which you think of seeing the learning opportunity from every experience regardless of the outcome. Now we have passion. I'm sure you all have heard this. My coach has always told me a happy swimmer is a fast swimmer, and I believe that is so true. What is your why? The meaning behind the hard work and commitment to sport. We have discipline, doing what you need to do to best support your goals while also listening to your body. And we have self-compassion, which might be a new one. I feel like some of these other ones we might have heard before. Self-compassion was something that I was introduced to throughout my collegiate career, and I think is what helped set me apart from when I was really struggling my freshman, sophomore year and really frustrated. I had a plateau, didn't drop time for 6 years. And then to my junior year, having that self-compassion piece of being kind and understanding towards ourselves and refraining from over magnifying a particular moment. So kind of taking perspective.
I was just going to add, we're going to hear from some other professional athletes, Olympic athletes, who do stress that fourth component that I think a lot of the times we overlook as athletes. And this is that mental fitness piece that we're adding today.
Alrighty, so mental resilience, what is it? It's the ability to experience and overcome stress or adversity and continue pursuing your goals and or perform tasks. I use this quote by Michael Jordan because I think people kind of forget that failure is part of the process. And so he says, I have failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So mental resilience is often referred to as grit and staying motivated in the face of hardship, because oftentimes when we are facing hardship, who knows, if we keep working at it, eventually we're going to overcome that hardship and reach the other side. So it's kind of being able to stick with that struggle and know that eventually it's going to pay off, because this is part of the process of being an athlete.
Yeah, and I think Michael Jordan is a great example of someone who redefined his relationship with failure, right? And that kind of plays hand in hand with what mental fitness, mental resilience is, right? He redefined it, he learned from it, he grew from it. It's what he did with it, rather than focusing in on just that negative portion of it. Yeah. And that's what we want to talk about today, is kind of redefining our relationship with some of these different concepts. And failure is one of them, right? How we talk to ourselves, how we respond to it.
Yeah. Before you move on, I want to just note that Michael Jordan was actually cut from his high school basketball team. I don't know if people knew this, and then became to be one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Great example of mental resilience. So this is kind of an example of what mental resilience looks like when you are at, say, a competition. So let's say this was something that always got in my head, and I don't know if this is like anyone else, but out of your control, there's a crowded warm-up pool. That's something that you can't control, but you have control over how you respond. So let's say the event is the crowded warm-up pool. You can respond by talking to yourself by saying, the warm-up pool is crowded, which kind of sucks, and I can still get a good warm-up in to prepare me for my races. So both feelings can exist. We're not trying to be overly positive here, but doing the best that you can with what you have wherever you are. Versus, let's say, same situation, crowded warm-up pool, and you start telling yourself, the warm-up pool is crowded, which means I cannot get a good warm-up in, and therefore my races won't be good. So that's kind of letting something that's out of your control have way more power than it should. And that's something I wanted to kind of use to break down what mental resilience is like at a competition.
And that's that piece that Elise has been talking about, right? How we talk to ourselves before, during, and after the performance.
Next one, we have passion. So passion is a strong feeling toward an activity that one likes, finds important, and spends a lot of time and energy. This is what's gonna fuel you on those really hard days, even if it's deep down. I had those plenty of those days. And actually, passion enhances your athletic performance, and that's why they say a happy swimmer is a fast swimmer. Like, it's true. Like, if you're competing in a place where you're having fun with it, chances are you're gonna be competing at your best. And the difference between passion and interest is that emotional component. And I really want to point that out, because if you don't have that emotional piece to it, then it's just something that, let's say, you have an interest in, and it doesn't mean have anything deeper underneath it. So that's a big piece. Also, that the next slide I'm going to get into the two types of passion, and I think this is something that also athletes struggle with. And we have harmonious passion and obsessive passion. So to kind of break that down a little bit more, I want to use a quote by Caleb Dressel, because I think he's an athlete that has a lot of passion in the sport. There was a quote that he said following the Tokyo Olympics, and I think really kind of shows that obsessive side of passion, because he became very perfectionistic. He was really critical of all the little details and not kind of focusing on all the positives that he did and the journey that he had spent so much time on. So what he said was, I didn't hit any of my goal times in Tokyo. Yeah, and that's not fair to myself. That's not fair at all. Like, I just won 5 gold medals on the biggest world stage in sports, and I'm thinking about how I wish I would have gone faster in certain events. I think that's what makes me great, but I think that can be detrimental if I want longevity in the sport. That is what's going to lead to the burnout. And I think that was a point where he recognized that, took a step back, started talking to somebody, and now he's kind of back at it and has a new love for the sport and is continuing to show up and notice like times when maybe I need to take a step back and check in with myself and kind of remember what is my why of why I'm doing this sport. Harmonious passion is more sustainable. There's a balance. You're able to disengage from the sport. You're kind of able to be like, all right, I've trained a lot this week. I deserve a break. Whereas the obsessive type of passion, it's I can't help myself, I must continue, and not letting yourself take a break. And that's a piece that goes into this mental fatigue and just this, like, your body just gets so worn down when you're putting so much effort in every day that you need to have that balance and let yourself take a break. And I think that's something that a lot of athletes kind of forget about. They're like, I just need to keep working and working and working. And it's like, that's important, and also the rest is important too.
And I'll just add to that, one thing we talk with a lot of our clients about is some unhelpful thinking patterns, and one of them that Elise actually mentioned is disqualifying the positives, right? We tend to focus only on the negatives and we don't see all these other great things that we did, which was part of that quote that she read, and you can also see the negative self-talk in there.
Yeah.
And then also, as Elise mentioned, which we talk with a lot of our clients about, is the importance of rest and recovery, right? It's just as important to success in our performance, right? Because as athletes, you train, you work hard, you take care of your muscles, you allow them to recover. We also need to do that with our mind, right? So that we don't have mental fatigue, just like we don't want physical muscular fatigue.
So this kind of leads into the next one of discipline. So acknowledging your goals and making adjustments to best support these goals regardless of motivation levels. And what I'm saying here is sometimes the sports world speaks about discipline in a way that never allows for a moment to check in with yourself and what your body needs. Discipline with a champion's mindset is seeing the little things as just as critical as the work that you're doing in the pool, in the weight room, etc. Like, discipline is having discipline in rest and recovery, knowing what your body needs to perform at its best, taking that break, refueling and nourishing your body. That's something like, let's say you finish a long practice and you're like, I just want to go take a nap. And it's like, yes, but also your body is needing to refuel, and you need to be consistent with that even if the motivation levels aren't there.
And just again, like to her point, rest and recovery mentally looks like the conversations we have with ourselves after the performance.
Yes.
Again, during the performance, the things we say, our self-talk, what we focus on, and our intentions for when we get back in the pool or back on the court, or back in the weight room. So, when we're performing at our peak levels, it's because we have allowed our body to rest and recover, right? We're taking care of ourselves. And that's just important with our mental game.
Yeah.
Right? So allowing ourselves to take that time to rest and recover will allow you to perform at your peak.
All right, self-compassion. What is it? It's examining your thoughts and feelings with a non-judgmental awareness while recognizing we make mistakes as athletes because we are human, and choosing to be kind to ourselves through the difficult moments as an athlete. I put this quote up here from Phelps because I believe that it really shows that self-compassion piece that he struggled with and recognized by saying, I didn't have much self-love probably through most of my career. I looked at myself as an athlete and not as a human being. So self-compassion, as Allison was saying, is the way you talk to yourself before, during, after practice, a meet, competition, all those things, and recognizing that you are human, you're going to make mistakes. You're gonna have wins, you're gonna have losses, but how you respond to those moments really matters. That's that self-talk piece. So the more self-compassion you have, the more you're able to bounce back after difficult moments. I think some of the barriers to self-compassion that I really faced was that I felt it means you're being irresponsible, it means you're being complacent, you're gonna become less motivated because you're kind of, in a way, being more gentle with yourself. And I think sport is telling us is like, you have to be so hard on yourself. And there's a time and place for that. And also I think that, again, that balance piece of needing to allow yourself to remember that you are more than your sport. You are more than your sport. You are more than a mistake that you make in the pool, and all of those things. Alrighty, so we're gonna practice a little self-compassion piece with kind of those components that I recognize in that definition. So we're gonna slow it down here because I want you all to take a moment to think about a time when, let's say, you didn't hit a goal time or make a cut, or maybe you DQ'd a relay and not perform at a meet after practicing well. Just kind of think about that moment. I'm thinking about it too. This is what we call mindfulness. These thoughts that come in, maybe you're telling yourself, this really sucks. I don't like this at all. I'm stressed. Maybe that's what you're feeling right now. You don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to tell yourself to stop. Just let those thoughts come in. So now this next piece is noticing, where does your mind immediately go when thinking about these moments? I don't believe it'd be very positive, which is okay. And this is where I encourage you to remind yourself that this kind of struggle is part of being an athlete. This last piece is what we call self-kindness. And this is how you talk to yourself. It doesn't have to be overly positive, it can be neutral. This can be telling yourself, this moment will pass, this is just a race. There is more to me than my sport. These are just a couple of examples, but these are some things that you can say to yourself, whether it's before a race, maybe you're feeling nervous, just kind of talking to yourself in a way that's like, it's okay to feel nervous. Lots of people are gonna be nervous before a race, that's that common humanity piece. And then giving yourself the best possible opportunity to perform at your best is by speaking to yourself kindly. Because if you're not, you're kind of missing out on that huge piece of what's going to take you to the next level.
But I think to Elise's point, right, we've talked a lot about how we speak to ourselves before, during, and after, and just kind of recognizing the emotions or the thoughts that come up, right? We're humans with non-judgmental awareness, right? Mm-hmm. We just recognize them like, okay, I'm nervous, right? And we all know as athletes that a specific amount of anxiety or nervousness is good for performance, right? It pushes us. And just recognizing this is a temporary experience, this is something that, we all have. What am I gonna do with it? How am I gonna push through this? I'm gonna focus on my intention. I'm gonna focus on my goal. And those are the kind of conversations that we're talking about when we're saying how you talk to yourself.
Yeah.
And just practicing that self-kindness, that compassion is really what, Phelps was talking about. That's gonna fuel you and push you and remind you that you are not, attached to the failure. It's an experience. You win some games, you lose some games. And just kind of redefining our relationship, meaning how we think about it, how we respond to it, what we do next, is that mindfulness piece and that self-compassion piece, which, comes back to this idea of mental fitness. How do we work on that? And again, as athletes, it's hard, right, to think about this mental piece, but also as athletes, we know that it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes consistency using these, different phrases, these affirmations, these little pieces of self-kindness. We know what it takes, the discipline it takes to train our mind.
And just really quickly to kind of round that out, self-compassion is associated with how adaptively people cope with challenging events. That's what I want you to think about when you hear self-compassion. So moving on to the next one, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience at the collegiate level. And one of the big parts of my career that I think really helped me was taking advantage of the mental health services that were provided to me. They weren't as much there the first 2 years of my time at Cal, but my junior year, when I swam at my best, I was really taking it seriously. I was really working on that self-compassion piece. That didn't come easy for me. That's what a lot of universities are recognizing is a huge part of the training for athletes, student athletes. You're under so much stress as a student. You have papers, you have tests, you're balancing, traveling with your sport and having to miss classes. You're under a lot of stress, and to kind of have a space where you can talk about something that's maybe very directed at your sport, or just kind of with the stress that you're under at being a college student, is becoming more and more recognized now. And I put some schools up here. Cal, we had the Cameron Institute. That was something that was developed later during my time, and I'm so grateful for it. And then same with USC, my 1 year there as a grad student transfer. They have the largest sports psychology program in the country, and I was so amazed by how much they had to offer and how they were prioritizing that. And that kind of model is trying to be replicated across the country by lots of other programs, and that makes me so happy because I think this is going to be a great turning point for the sports world.
Okay, so just some tools for parents to take away from our conversation today in terms of how you can support, your student athlete, your child, is to just offer a broader perspective of success, right? We all know that we win some, we lose some, and it's what we do with it, what we take away, and how we set an intention for the next performance, the next goal, the next training session. Prioritize growth over outcomes is a big conversation piece, right? Focusing on effort rather than the outcome. And then the third is respond to wins and losses with warmth. Sometimes waiting for our athletes to kind of process their emotions, their feelings, and then allowing them that space to talk about it, and just validating the big feelings that come up. And validating doesn't, mean that, we're saying everything's okay or it's a sign of weakness. It's just recognizing that these feelings come up, right? And we're processing them together, and then problem solving. How do we work through this? What do we want to do next?
Yeah.
And so those are some ways that parents can support athletes post-game, before a game or a meet.
Yeah. Before we end, I just want to share that this plaque, this trophy that I got, yes, it had to do with the hard work that I was putting in, but I want to say that it really had to do with how I was talking to myself. The day of this race, there was a lot of obstacles that were facing me. There was like a tornado warning. I was sitting in the locker room for about 45 minutes with a lot of athletes that I was about to compete with. Could have easily gotten in my head. I was feeling nervous, but I was trying to talk to myself in a way that was like, it's okay, I got this. Just be here in the present moment. That was something I was working on that entire year, and that's what led to this. Like, yes, the hard work was there in the pool, but the mental side of it was the missing piece for me. I feel like those first 2 years of my swimming career at Cal, and is something that I am so grateful to now be able to speak about with athletes at younger generations to inspire and share that you're more than your sport, because that was something that I really struggled with. And yeah, that's why I'm really happy to be here today with you all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Any questions?
In your opening remarks, you mentioned that you can maybe get too anxious, that it's so much that may hinder your performance. Is that what you were saying?
It's okay to be nervous. I think there's lots of different ways that you can respond to your nerves. Be a bit concise and in light of the conversation we had, I think that self-compassion piece is huge, because it's like recognizing I'm feeling nervous because this is something I care about. This is something that others are probably experiencing, and being able to ground yourself in a way, let's say it's breathing. We hear breathing a lot of times as something that can be helpful. And I think to be a little bit more specific, there's certain techniques you can do of box breathing, and it's breathing in for 4 seconds, you're holding for 4 seconds, you're exhaling for 4 seconds, and you're holding for 4 seconds. And something to just ground yourself and just kind of talking to yourself in a way of it's okay to feel nervous, taking some breaths, slowing down, trying to be in the present moment is what I would say helps the most.
And we work with a lot of clients, and that was kind of the piece where we were talking about, because it's the same line that we tell all of our clients, is it takes practice and consistency, especially with box breathing.
Yeah.
And there is science behind it. Doing it 3 or 4 times, right, really does shift the nervous system so that the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, right? It calms us down. And so that's an example of what you can do to kind of settle some of those nerves, right? We have that bodily piece, that nervous system piece, where we're taking those deep breaths in, we're resetting our nervous system, and then we also have the self-talk piece, right? We're utilizing coping statements or positive affirmations. This feeling's temporary, this is normal, I'm feeling this way because I'm excited, I'm passionate about this sport, I want to do well today, I can do this, and whatever coping statements work for you, because they're different for everyone, right? Coping strategies are different, and they, work differently for everyone, but it's those 2 components, right? And when we were talking about how you talk to yourself before the performance, right? That's a major piece. Grounding ourselves, bringing us to the present moment, whether it's just noticing your feet on the ground, if you're sitting in a chair, noticing those sensations, doing your deep breathing work, and then also working on that mental fitness piece, the coping statements, how we're talking to ourselves. And that's a big piece that we work with when we work with athletes.
Yeah, and that breathing that we were both talking about, it's something that I wouldn't say just try it right before the race. It's something you need to be doing outside of competition, because the more practice you're doing it, the more your body's gonna respond and be yes, this is something I do to really slow myself down and just be in the present moment, because it may not be as effective. That's something we tell our athletes if you're just doing it on race day right before the race, because your body's already up there. You're trying to be a little bit more proactive.
And again, like an athlete, we know that the first time we do it, right? The first time we go to the gym, we're not going to be buff. Or the first time we try a move or a strategy, we're not going to have it down perfectly. That's that practice. That's what Elise is talking about, is that you have to, again, train your body to take these deep breaths and do it at a moment where you're not experiencing anxiety or nervousness, so that you know what it's like to feel calm. And then you apply it to those moments, right? Just like an athlete would apply a skill or a strategy or a move in, the midst of their performance. And, same goes for that mental fitness piece, those coping styles.
Good question. Yes.
Are there any tactical pieces that, or pieces of advice that parents can take away today? So say following their athlete has a terrible performance at a meet, and the car ride home is awful and the kid is not talking at all. Are there any tactical pieces of advice that you can give to the parents?
I would say that, your athlete is already very hard on themselves. And so just showing up, and that's kind of the part that on our slide we shared showing up with warmth, whether it's a win or a loss. It's not being like, oh, just be positive. It's just kind of being there and just having that general support for them. You know, their coaches are going to give them more feedback on, say, the details of technique, but in that current moment, they just need you to be there. You don't there's not something specific to say, but just being there with them and recognizing like this is a hard moment.
And like what Elise was saying, just recognizing how they're feeling and showing up and being there and being present. As athletes, we're hard on ourselves already.
Yeah.
We've already gone through every single detail of every mistake that we made, and we don't need to re-rehearse that on the drive home. And so just kind of allowing your athlete to process the feelings and just recognizing what you notice in them, or being present. You know, like I noticed that, you know, you're having a lot of feelings right now, or that was a hard game,
Yeah.
you know, or a tough performance, but, you know, allowing them the space and time to process.
Yeah.
So when you were a junior and you took advantage of the mental health program
Yeah.
there now, it sounds like the basis of the program was self-talk and also relaxation techniques. Was there anything beyond that, or is that really the essence of the program? What helped you?
Yeah, really just that space, having that space to you know, talk to somebody every week. I was in there every week. Sometimes it'd be twice a week on really hard weeks that I was experiencing, and just having that consistency of being able to just talk to somebody. And yes, there was like there was the techniques on breathing and just kind of slowing down, but just really that space to talk to somebody and really share with what I was feeling and being seen, and that really helped. So it wasn't just like two things. It was like I was showing up and they were accepting me as I were in that current moment. Yeah. There's no other questions. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks Elise so much for coming in today. If people want to find more about you, where can they contact you?
My email, elisegarcia.therapy@gmail.com. I think Sid will put it somewhere around here. That'd probably be the best way to reach me. If you guys like that video, like and subscribe.
We come out with new videos every Thursday.